In this episode of the Dr. Clay Show, we're going to talk about set, rep, and rest guidelines for hypertrophy. In other words, how many sets should you do, how many reps should you do, and how long should you rest between sets if you want to gain some muscle mass. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Dr. Clay Show. I'm your host, Dr. Clay Height, and as I said in the intro, we're going to talk about the guidelines for gaining muscle mass. But first, I want to give a shout out to the San Francisco 49ers. Man, the 49ers are on their way, I hope, fingers crossed as I'm saying this. They're on their way to the Super Bowl, but they've got one more game to go, and that is against the Atlanta Falcons. Now, being from Birmingham, Alabama, and I still to this day consider Birmingham my hometown. So with Atlanta being right down the road, it's roughly 100 miles away from Birmingham. So you would think I like the Falcons, and I don't dislike the Falcons by no means. In fact, I kind of like them. I'm just not as passionate about them as I am some other NFL teams. And with that being said, I'm far more a college football fan, I've got to admit, than a pro football fan. But nonetheless, one of my favorite NFL teams is obviously the San Francisco 49ers, local Bay Area team here. How can I not pull for them? I mean, after all, when a Bay Area team does well, everybody in the Bay Area is happy. Everybody's got their smile on. So, I mean, I can't help but pull for them. So with that being said, this coming Sunday, the 49ers play the Falcons in Atlanta. So whoever wins that game will be going to the Super Bowl to play the winner of the Baltimore Ravens and the New England Patriots. Between that game, I don't really care, but I'm leaning toward the Ravens just because I'm tired of the Patriots. Just as many college football fans might be tired of the Alabama Crimson Tide, I'm kind of tired of the New England Patriots doing so well. So I'm hoping it's the 49ers versus the Ravens in this next Super Bowl. But as I said, the 49ers have to first get by the Atlanta Falcons, and that takes place this coming Sunday, the 19th, I believe that is. So I'll be keeping an eye on that game for sure. Because think about this. If the 49ers ended up winning the Super Bowl, let's just pretend 49ers won the Super Bowl, then the Bay Area would have the NFL, the football champions, as well as the Major League Baseball world champions in the San Francisco Giants. And currently the Bay Area also is home to the UFC heavyweight champion. Cain Velasquez is currently the heavyweight world champion in that sport. So, man, the Bay Area would just be rocking if the 49ers can pull this off. So, like I said, I'm keeping my fingers crossed. But now let's address the topic that we're more here to talk about. You didn't come here to listen to me rant about the 49ers or my love for Bay Area sports. We're here to talk about some hypertrophy guidelines. And hypertrophy, for those who don't know, is it's increase in muscle size by not just muscle size, but by an increase in the size of the muscle fibers. So it's an increase in the size of muscle fibers. All right, so some muscle growth, in other words. I know there's some guys out there, maybe some girls too, that want to get some kind of muscle. Whatever the muscle it is, you want to get it bigger. Well, as I'm putting together a review for their certified personal trainer test, I came across these guidelines of theirs regarding hypertrophy guidelines as it pertains to the number of sets to do, the number of reps or repetitions to do, and the rest intervals. So I wanted to share those with you in order to help you get your grow on. Now, these guidelines from the NSCA come by way of their book called The Essentials of Personal Training, which is a good book that I highly recommend anyone interested in training at all that you have in your library, so to speak. So regarding the sets, reps, and rest intervals, let me share with you what the NSCA recommends in order to maximize hypertrophy. All right, now in terms of sets, they say to do between 3 to 6 sets of an exercise, and obviously an exercise that is specifically geared towards stimulating the muscle that you want to induce hypertrophy in, or the muscle that you want to grow. So they say to do 3 to 6 sets. All right, now in terms of reps, they say 6 to 12, between 6 and 12 reps per each of these 3 to 6 sets. And then in terms of rest, they say rest anywhere between 30 and 90 seconds. So I guess you could say with an average of about 60 seconds rest. Now, I don't disagree with these guidelines one bit, and these are solid guidelines, and the NSCA can pretty well trust anything they put out. There's going to be some reasonable info at least. Now, I could of course take exceptions to some of this stuff and say, well, it depends on this and depends on that, but really these are solid guidelines. Especially I wanted to take a look at this number of repetitions. A lot of people wonder how many reps they should do in order to maximize hypertrophy. Well, this 6 to 12 range is a good range because it's kind of a hybrid, so to speak. Now, what I mean by that is if you go less than 6 repetitions, then you're targeting more strength. It's less than 6, and of course using a heavier weight as well. Less than 6 reps or so is better for strength, whereas more than 12 reps is better for endurance. But when you want to maximize hypertrophy, you want to go somewhere in between there, generally speaking. And that's a good repetition range because it's heavy enough to still recruit a large number of muscle fibers. In other words, you get a decent amount of motor unit recruitment. Because generally speaking, the heavier weight that you lift, the more motor units that are activated or recruited. So you want to lift heavy enough to still stimulate an adequate number of muscle fibers. Because if a muscle fiber is not stimulated, then it's not going to grow. So using a weight that is heavy enough so that you reach failure, and when we say doing 6 to 12 reps, we're talking about with a weight that only allows you to get this many repetitions. So in other words, it's like your repetition maximum, RM as they call it. So you're going to be using a weight that's between 6 to 12, but it's between your 6 and 12 repetition maximum. Now, the other end of this range is 12 repetitions, because if you go any lighter than that, then you're going to tend to not be using a weight that's heavy enough. But if you go less than 6 repetitions, then you're going to end up using a weight that is too heavy, and therefore your time under tension is too short. Not only do you want to use heavy enough weight so that you recruit ample motor units, but you also need to be able to lift that weight for a certain number of reps or a certain amount of time. Because there's essentially 2 components when it comes to hypertrophy. You need to stimulate the muscle fibers, and then you need to make the muscle fibers work, and the rest of the muscle itself. You need to make it work for a certain period of time. So if you're using a heavy weight like your 1 repetition maximum, and you could only do that 1 time, doing that is simply not enough time under tension. You're not stimulating the muscle for long enough. So this 6 to 12 repetition range is kind of the sweet spot that allows you to use heavy enough weight to still recruit a bunch of motor units and stimulate a lot of muscle fibers, but it's a light enough weight so that you can get ample time under tension. Thus, you can stimulate and challenge the muscle for a long enough period of time. And even the rest interval is sort of a hybrid, so to speak. If you rest shorter period than 30 seconds, then you're going to more focus on improving your endurance. However, if you go more than 90 seconds, that's going to allow you to emphasize lifting a heavier amount of weight. Whereas this 30 to 90 seconds, that's kind of the sweet spot. It's somewhere in between. So again, it metabolically challenges the muscle by not letting you rest too long, as in longer than 90 seconds, but it also lets you rest long enough so that you can regenerate your body's energy store, specifically ATP and CP. You can regenerate ATP and CP or your energy stores long enough so that you perform decently on the next set. So this rest interval of 30 to 90 seconds, or roughly 60 seconds on average, definitely makes sense for hypertrophy. So in summary, if your goal is hypertrophy, according to the NSCA, you want to do about 3 to 6 sets of an exercise, and on each set you want to do somewhere between 6 to 12 repetitions, and you want to rest about 30 to 90 seconds between sets. And over time, by applying these guidelines to your training, over time that will definitely help you to maximize your hypertrophy and get your swole on. All right, my friend, that's going to do it for this episode of the Dr. Clay Show. Till next time, peace.